Hey, it's the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together and take on different visual storytelling topics, making things, the lifestyle of making things, how we think about making things, planning to make things. We think really hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host is...
Hello, I am Rob Stenzinger, a user experience and game designer.
Hey, good to see you again, Rob.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Good to see you. Right on. It's been a few weeks. We did a couple of episodes that were the rebroadcast type. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you for doing that. We both took our turns.
Yeah, we each had a week off there, and it made sense.
Yeah, but now we're back, and we're closing in on the end of 2017, and which has been an intense year for a lot of people, right? To put it one way. But also, we have been undergoing different kinds of constraints in our lives with regard to projects and project management, and thought maybe this time around, both in a way to start to begin to close out an intense year, but also just to practice this way of boosting each other up, talk about Pep Talks a little bit. Maybe give each other some Pep Talks. What do you say, Rob?
I think it's a really fun idea. I want to give it a shot because I think it's. I'm ready. It's the whole. It's the product that I want to buy. So I'm happy to help with with a company or effort to bring that product in the world so it can exist. Not that we're not the originators of Pep Talks, but I'm just into it. I'm so into it. I'm whipping out bad metaphors.
I feel like this is a thing that I have a lot of practice in as a teacher. Like, a lot of my job is encouraging people and pointing out where they're succeeding to help give them the strength to take on the things that they're having difficulties with, and pointing out the things that are making the path a little less ambiguous for them, right? I feel like that's something I'm used to doing quite a bit with people, but it's something that I don't know if I take as much time as I should in my creative circles to participate in that kind of thing, rooting each other on.
Well, the arrangement is very explicit when you're a teacher, right? That can be a fundamental part of a teacher's role, and I would hope it should be, but maybe there's different approaches out there. But when you have that it's almost like I do have an easier time designing things for people and thinking through angles and facets of problems and ways to find what kind of questions could we ask to do some research to then get some evidence to have some focus to improve a design. That's not hard for me to do for other people, but that's pretty hard for me to do for me.
Oh, yeah. That's another facet to this thing that maybe we'll explore in 10,000 Feet Up, or maybe even here if we want to, is the idea of the hope is that by us doing this together on the show, we're also modeling a potential activity. People who don't necessarily have a large network of creative cohorts or teachers will be able to self-talk themselves. I was just having this conversation just today with a friend about comics. And I'm not trying to put comics in any kind of special bag here and say oh, this is the only art that does this. But because so much of that gig requires a lot of hours of wrestling with ambiguity, and maybe even after you've done a couple projects, you don't necessarily know how long this next project's going to take. And there's lots of opportunities to go through that whole 5-step cycle that Kazuki Buishi, coined on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've noticed that I've become accustomed to, without even really realizing that I was doing this, but I've become accustomed to identifying with the monastic sense of I'm doing it because I like doing it. Yes, I like having a physical artifact in my hands. Yes, I like having a conversation with a reader. Yes, I like different feedback loops. But the thing that keeps me coming back is the act of doing it over and over again. And I noticed that as a result of that, it's easier for me to get from sadness to gratitude. It's not like an instant jump, but I feel like the path is a lot easier for me now than it was when I was younger, and it felt a little bit more ambiguous, and I was thinking more about like, I've got to get to this level in my career at this age or whatever, otherwise I haven't done the schedule right. And so I find that like self pep talks are relatively easier for me than they used to be, but they still aren't the easiest thing in the entire world. I don't know if any of that frames up what we're going to do. But
I think it makes a lot of sense. And for me, I think it varies with what I'm trying to encourage myself about, because I think some topics I have a lot of practice with, being able to regain focus and make progress, or and then somehow maybe get benefit from the continuing practice and motion and movement, where things happen that help you be distracted from your own self-talk. And if you, even if it is going on, the volume gets turned down a little lower and lower because you're just moving. So, but yet other things I don't feel as ready to move on. And so I'm excited to just explore this, not from an authoritative guru standpoint and what have you, but like, let's see what we can learn by modeling this. And also then, do the thing we do where we ask more about the why and how.
All right. It sounds like a plan. Ready? Okay. Hit the go button then. Go on the ground.
I am.
All right. Well, then we shall.
I just don't know what you're going to play.
All right, so this is the part of the show where we actually act out and model the activity in some way or another. And so for this section, what are we going to do? What do you think we should do, Rob?
Listen to the Dragon Ball theme. So, because evidently that's the shortcut. Just that's it. Episode done. You just got to actually get your groove on, and
yeah,
that's it. The rhythm's going to get you, right?
Oh my gosh. I have a running playlist that is like, and like a lot of people who exercise do, they have those playlists. And yes, there are certain songs where I can go 0 to 60 in terms of motivation. And you want to know what one of my guilty ones is? Quiet Riot, Slick Black Cadillac.
Oh gosh.
There's something about that song that just makes you just want to pound the ground with my feet. I don't know what it is, but yeah. There's the first one. There's the first modeling activity, is put on some song that gets you fired up, right?
It is a weird shortcut where I don't know if it always solves a fundamental, like, hey, you know what? Maybe there's a helpful observation you could put together that would get you more unstuck versus like, who knows? Maybe a song is a permanent solution. I don't know. But it certainly works for me. I have a lot of those, like Guilty and otherwise, I suppose. Hair metal does a lot of things. But okay. So I'm curious. I think let's see. So what's something that you are looking at and thinking you're feeling stuck about?
There's actually a number of things. Stuck. Okay, can we back up just a second and let me come back at you with a question? Could you further define stuck just a little bit?
So I think stuck is really the feeling of an emotion that is somewhat negative or somewhat to very negative and like very present, and like somehow it's resilient, like it's not going away, right? And so to me, like that's like it's you're in the situation where like a pep talk could be really nice, whether or not you're in the vicinity of being able to receive a pep talk.
Okay.
Because pep talk assumes like, so whether or not so if you're with someone can wear that other hat, but otherwise, I mean, you're going to have to wear this hat. So I guess just think of this as like you're stuck versus reaching out to someone who's unstuck and helping you out in some way. And it's like this, like, I guess for me, that's why I picked that word, because it feels almost like regarding a certain matter, or that will like, and not to be, let's see, how can I be specific? Like getting like fearful or concerned or worried about a particular thing that's distracting, and I'm not making progress on my creative output, right? And so there's the thing I can observe that seems like a problem, and also the feeling, right? And like that it's almost like not being able to take a full breath, being or not being able to move. It's like really feeling down, challenged, behind a barrier or something. How's that?
That's good. That's really good. That you painted a big yellow line around a lot of different feelings that go with that word. I think that cover a lot of different scenarios. And so now we'll just like pitch to each other what were some things that we might be stuck on, and then model the activity of getting the other person out of it. Which one do I want to pick? I've got a number of things that I'm stuck on.
Okay.
I guess one of the bigger ones, one of the ones that's haunting me, is I have a lot of notes compiled for this graphic novel that I want to serialize online next year. And I'm finding that it's almost impossible for me to put pencil to paper and start just freaking thumbnailing the thing. I know that's one of the hardest parts. I know it's the most challenging part. I know it's the most interesting part. That's the part where I really feel like a cartoonist, is when I'm doing that. And I've got 2 years, more than 2 years worth of notes to put together into this thing. I've done the grunt work on this. Now it's just a matter of assembling it. But I'm absolutely petrified. I mean, like petrified in the classic sense of the word. Like I can't move because, and I don't even know why. I don't know why. I just know that there's just this enormous feeling of dread about starting that thing, which cascades out to feelings of, well, gosh, you've done this 100 times. You've done this so many times. Why this? Why now? Come on, you get over it, kid. Suck it up and get to work. That's what you do. You're a professional after all. Or are you? You know? And so these feelings of like self-criticism and like, to be honest, a little bit of shame kicks in, right? Well, maybe I'm not. And I want it to be honest, but I also want it to be structured. So like there's a lot of indecision about how to begin and a lot of fear about beginning on it. And I have to admit, it doesn't feel good to say that out loud. It does not feel good to say that out loud.
So like sharing that, like, is that because of the forum that we're in? That's the tough part of sharing versus like if we
I'd feel this uncomfortable with it if I was just with a couple of friends, because I do feel like this is something that I've already proven to myself that I can do, and it feels kind of icky to be scared again. You know?
Yeah, that's interesting. You said so many, like really heavy, difficult, important things. Like you mentioned paralysis, you mentioned like shame, and I wrote down the word like, judgment, right? And it reminds me like what do you think of like trying next? Like, has anything come up that that was helping you get a foothold, or is it, or like where is that at right now?
No, I don't have any foothold yet because I haven't had a whole lot of time to think about it. Right, this has been like background radiation that's been going on. When I have free moments, like when I'm like going in between venues or when I'm exercising or something, this comes up in my brain, and then I'll think like, okay, well, I need to apply some cycles to this thing. Now's the time to do that. And then the moment I get that like that free bandwidth, that's when that fear kicks in.
Oh wow, yeah. It's like, okay,
so,
here's your time, that precious commodity, that precious thing, And and now what? And that's I've felt that a lot too. That's hard.
Yeah.
So what I mean, what are you, is there a particular like are you looking for observations about this?
What am I looking for? What am I looking for when it comes to that? Okay. If I were to be honest, what I really want is an easy prompt to motivate me to start. Just do this to get the ball rolling, right? But like that's like asking for a pill. I'm asking for a pill. Like if I were to be honest, that's like what my lizard brain is craving for, right? Give me some kind of easy starting point. Where's my how-to book, right? But if I were to dig deeper and ask myself what I really want, what do I really want? I really want somebody, or I don't want somebody. What I want is some kind of sense of clarity as to what part of the story that I have ironed out so far is the best place to start. Where if I were to share like my notes with a select group of people, where do I see them emotionally reacting, so that I could say, well, maybe that's the place to start whittling, right?
Wow, that reminds me. I'm not throwing my hat in the ring for this, but I remember
Please do.
I provided this this kind of reflection for someone who storyboarded something recently, and I noticed that it was a fine timeline of events. It totally was logical, but yet there wasn't that pull you in moment in the beginning, right? And so I noticed that, well, that moment is over here. Why don't you start the story right there? And the person thought, oh, that's a good. Their stuckness was not kind of, I don't think it was as intense as what you're describing, but like, and nor was their storyboard of the scope that you're describing, right? But but I guess I've seen, I guess that can be helpful, not to be like, oh yeah, I'm patting myself on the back for a thing I did, but it's hard to know sometimes, like, oh yeah, I did all this, and all this is really valuable and beneficial to help. It's a huge like asset mine to bring about this project, but then there's this fresh perspective is fantastic sometimes.
Oh yeah, no, that's when I was working on Rockets with Ann. There was one piece of the book where we were really stuck on something, and I gave it to Dan Mishkin, and he came back within like a couple hours, like, oh, bam, 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 these 3 things. I was like, oh my gosh, you're right, you just fixed the whole thing. Like he came in with a rivet going, pop, 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 and the whole structure was fixed again. And I was like, wow, thank you so much, Dan. You helped us out hugely. And he's like, he said, well, you guys are in the weeds. You're the ones in the thick of it. How can you possibly see it clearly? You need an outside perspective to come in to help you see what you can't see. That's part of it. So yeah, outside perspective, seeing, because as the one who's making the thing, I'm the one who's like is aware of all of the various choices that are in front of me. Whereas you're only going to see the choices that I've committed to so far, right?
Ooh. Is there anything else that would like give that positive boost forward, or sort of like
okay,
dusting off, right?
Yeah. So
like, yeah, okay, shake. You ready to shake it off and take another run?
Else. Well, Jesse Kaufman's in the chat, and he asks, "Do you think the lack of designated time feeds the fear?" I don't know. I'm not sure, because I noticed that like when I do have breaks, like when I have little blocks of time, because I was just on vacation, I had some blocks of time to think about this, right? Like I found out the hard way that the sun sets at 4:30 in Death Valley in this time of year. So there was a lot long evenings for me to sit and think about this stuff, and I don't think that pressure being taken off changed it didn't change the nature of the fear. I guess it made it a little less urgent, but it still it was just as dreadful. But as far as like dusting off, like what would I need to hear? What would I most need to hear in the situation?
Can I mean, and there's no,
Yeah.
and part of that is like, is to not be prescriptive, right? I'm like I had a couple of thoughts, but like,
Okay.
I'm also
Hit me with the
curious.
thoughts.
Well,
Hit
I
me
had a
with the
thought
thoughts.
that, let's see. So sometimes when someone gains a lot of skill, they can have a particularly high set of expectations about how they perform. And that's a pretty, that's an engine for anxiety, right? And it can help, it can cause like, expectations that are very fixed. Like I am a high performer and I need to have high performance output and evidence or whatever, right? I don't know. Like maybe that's a thing. That's kind of a growth versus fixed mindset, right? Where everyone's got a mix of both. And I like in one context, I'm totally flexible guy. In other contexts, I'm panicky guy, right?
Oh man, I have been charting this on the Thunder Punch dailies I did this month for Art Sound Off. Is like, yeah, in the classroom I'm Mr. Loosenese. Let's work with what we got. That's the fun of teaching. But when it comes to working on comics, and I was telling Jesse this the other day. I'm like, you really don't want to work with me on a book because I get wound so tightly and about is everything working right? Is everything moving properly? Are we on schedule? Are we shipping everything the way we should be? Ugh, yeah. I'm very fixed mindset when it comes to like being in the process of the stuff. So yeah,
And, I mean, that has a lot of good that can have tools to it as well, and a lot of use. But like there, I know a trick that you've used, and I've stolen many, not just one trick. Like you have an entire category or section of a hardware store of tools of this trick of doing exercises to make moving ahead safe, right? And there's likely something in there in your own toolbox to be like, all right, gotta fail small, gotta whatever, make the whatever crappy first draft, whatever that would be.
There's a little bit of physician heal thyself in there. Like you've done this with kids 100 times. You've done this with grown-ups even. Dig into that toolbox and see what you got in there. No, but okay. So what was immensely helpful to hear though is you responding with somebody at a high skill set, feeling that they need to perform at a high output or a high quality output, right? So in that very scientific sounding observation was a very kind observation saying like, well, you're really good and it's natural that you expect yourself to perform even better. And maybe, just maybe, the fact that you're really good will mean that it's going to be okay once you get started. That's what I heard encoded in there.
That was coded in there, yeah. Yeah.
So, but that was a very specific phrasing that I think was extremely useful. Other than like, you got this, right? Which is also really good to hear.
I got bags of you got this, but I wanted to see like there's something very specific. I mean, because I believe in everybody's ability to dig in and adapt and grow and all that kind of stuff and overcome. Like, yeah, I mean, you're a very high performer in this, and just the skill you bring to the task of creating comics is it's vast, right? And it's so vast you probably don't even quite see it, especially because you're teaching and out there advocating at the beginning part of people's journey all the time.
Well, and what is that? What is that? That mental effect of like when somebody is just starting something, they think how hard can it be, and like they overestimate their ability to do it.
Dunning-Kruger,
and like the opposite end of Dunning-Kruger is as you achieve more skill, then you like become less aware of like what skill you actually have.
Yeah.
So you underestimate your ability to perform. I'm not saying I'm necessarily there, but I'm pointing to the fact that is a possibility in the spectrum
totally
of potential outcomes.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's one of those, stupid things our brains do. And, you've got a brain. Maybe you're doing that.
Yeah. And so I think another thing that, the next step I would inquire about in this pep talk session would be like, well, would it be okay if, say, once a month we had a check-in session where I can share what I've got and you react to it for me? And like, all I would want then is just react. You don't have to give me any pointers. You don't have to give me any tips. You don't have to tell me what to do. Just give me your emotional response to what you're seeing, right?
There's totally a link I forgot to add to the show notes. I'm just going to mention it now. But there's a pep talk that Neil Gaiman gave as a blog post to the NaNoWriMo community a few years back. And like some of what you're describing reminds me of that. Where
let me look it up.
Like
pep talk from Neil Gaiman, National Novel Writing Month.
Yeah,
found it, and we can put it in the show notes. But I'll pull it up on the screen right now. Do you have any thoughts to reflect on it, or do you want
to? I think there's a lot in it, but the gist of it being, that you can get caught up in the aloneness of the act of writing, or the act of creating, and typically creators are a part of a community or a team of some sort, and even if their role isn't something that's heavily credited or heavily emphasized in how we credit work, we don't create work alone. And so having others to react to it and to break you out of your own normal patterns and tools that are fantastic for your brain to do in one context and not that useful in others, it's immensely helpful. Like to have an editor, or to have maybe, or like the Pixar book, what was it? No, it was IDEO. It was Creative Confidence. And oh gosh, there was a Pixar book about this too, and it's escaping me. But you get into the idea of like a brain trust. It's extravagant. Ever since I heard about the idea of brain trust, I've wanted a brain trust. I've shopped for a brain trust. I don't know how to get a brain trust. I'm so sold on the idea of having some people I trust to be like, worked hard, thought about this, but could use some reactions. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, the problem, one of the things I run into as a quote unquote high performer is I surround myself with a bunch of high performers who don't have the bandwidth to be that person for me, right? That sounding board. I have one friend who is a non-cartoonist who doesn't overcommit the way I do. And he has been really useful in the past for that. Like, I think having just somebody just to emotional react to things that I'm working on is a really great way to get me back into the game. Because like the Neil Gaiman, I was reading it while you were talking about it, and yeah, there's a lot about the isolation of making things, and not just books, not just art, anything that requires like a lot of mental attention is going to isolate you from other people in one way or another, right?
Yep. Very much so.
Do you want to talk about one of the things you're stuck on, or do you want to move on to, because I'm giving you an out here, Rob, because I've been listening to your art sound offs as well. And when you were on Thunder Punch Daily, it was marvelous listening to you talk about like the line you draw around yourself, like the width of the circle you draw between your personal life and the rest of the world.
Sure. Yeah, but it's not like Musashi Miyamoto's Book of Five Rings circle kind of clear, but like it's a thing. There's a boundary, but this is my creative process, and that's where I'm like, yeah, come in, whatever. My workshop's way more open. Other than I do try to, like, sometimes I don't share that many details about a project because it doesn't feel right sometimes, and it's about I'm still figuring it out. Right? Like I couldn't tell you the exact gameplay dynamics of, for instance, the Ghost Brawlers, right? The group of girls and one of the girls' brothers that kind of, they get caught up into a world of where they get affected by like a ghost world, and they get, then they gotta fight ghosts and stuff. And it's I had some things figured out. I had a mini comic, whatever. loose concepts for gameplay because I wanted to do a game and a story, but yet not enough about it. Not enough, right? So I didn't feel ready to share. And I could talk about how I don't feel ready to share and share a little bit, but like to go into deeper detail on that, I didn't feel to be of service. But like you have like this whole whole year I've been picking up, putting down, exploring, noodling, how to proceed on essentially that, where I've got a hypothesis about telling a story and having a game, yet I'd work solo overall with this stuff. And I know that that's not typical, and that's okay. I'm not too worried about that. It's not that I won't work with other people. It's more that life's complicated, and I work at odd hours, and I'm not in a funding situation where I think I could really pay someone what they're worth. So then I'm like, well, okay, it's my ball. So at the very least, what I've come to accept is that I need to put out the intriguing rough demo tape, where then maybe I can gather some funding and collaborators or whatever, or do a Kickstarter. I don't know, right? But I'm wrestling with let's see. It's a bit of a tangle, because I've got a hypothesis that is like, I really think there would be something about telling a even if it's a small comic based story and pairing it along with a not too complex video game, but complex enough where there's an interesting fun loop in there, and maybe two different fun loops, so like a tactical game and a meta game, just a little bit, right? Nothing too crazy. Maybe it's just achievements and like intriguing gameplay with like I'm currently looking at combining a brawler, but a really basic brawler, with sort of being this is funny, but with helpfulness. Okay, gotta be. And I think of it as kind of like it's like, think of the problems like maybe you have to fight. You're like Jackie Chan in Rumble in the Bronx, right? And there's goons, but you don't want the goons to die, right? And so it's a different situation. Maybe you're making sure that if someone drops their bag of groceries, you don't want it all spill, right? That kind of thing. Conceptually. Okay.
So would there be like a price to pay if I'm just spitballing now, because like when you said you don't want anybody to die, I was like, why wouldn't you want people to die? Like, what would be like a penalty for people dying? Oh, you lose points. No, it's called ghost brawlers. They're brawling ghosts.
Oh, and that's not
if somebody
even
dies.
I set down ghost brawlers. So this is for a different. This is for a different.
Oh,
story.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're talking about like golden axe, but instead of just like going sideways and just killing everybody, it's going sideways and there's a benefit baked into helping people.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm signed up. Point me at the Kickstarter.
All right. Well,
I have money.
So that's really encouraging, right?
Well, I can tell you as somebody who played. Okay, so they made a He-Man game where it was for the iPad, where you just like go through like different dungeons and like monsters come at you, and like I was loving it. I'm like, wow, it's got the music, it's got the art design from the original show. Oh, I have to punch that bat. Do I really have to punch that bat? I'm really not enjoying this game. Like, it killed the game for me, right? So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, what did that bat do? So,
yeah.
Oh God,
give me the option to go around it.
Because you're He-Man in particular, right? Because
yes,
if you're sort of like, yeah, if there were a different story and you had abstract monsters or whatever, it's not like, I mean, Golden Axe.
Sure, when I play Smash TV, that dissonance is not there, right?
Gotcha. But totally seems like, yeah, they're breaking a premise related to He-Man. They're sort of they're hurting a promise. And that's the thing I'm trying to wrestle with, is like, I want to make a game that has a little bit of depth, a little bit of like aboutness that is a philosophy that I care a lot about. Like sometimes I feel dissonance with just even like Streets of Rage, where I think this is based on like values that I don't have deeply well thought out things about this. These are feelings, okay? But like we have brawlers where, maybe you have an authority figure or an empowered someone or other that's they're out to mete out justice toward people who just don't have that much to do, or they're not set up with, like, if you aren't there to consume, you're bad and in the way, right? And so maybe your opportunities aren't the same as this person who's the empowered hero you picked in the start screen, right? And so now you're dealing with, like, maybe you're hitting people who are homeless, or maybe you're, like, whatever. And if you're picking food up off the street, should you really eat that? Is that for you? Is that for someone else? This kind of stuff frustrates me sometimes, right?
Right.
And anyway, so I got this passion that I'm like, I want to put that into a game, and I see some things gelling. And so this is like iteration notes, like you described, over a long period of time. In a way, you could say, yeah, this is like me picking up Ghost Brawlers again and realizing, oh, there's a different story here. There's the hypothesis that was underlying it. I'm revisiting that with a different world, different story, and even more in, like, things I care about that I'm trying to work into the design, yet not make it overly complicated, all that, right? Because it has to be something that I can do. Anyway, so
okay.
Yeah.
What are you stuck on? I mean, is it resources? Is it just a feeling of, is anybody, because, like, another thing I heard in there that maybe you didn't mean to say, or maybe it wasn't your intention. Maybe you're not even feeling this way, and I'm just reading into it. I'm hearing, I have to make an intriguing demo tape. Like, in other words, make with the intrigue. Be interesting. Come on, chop. Get something interesting out there. And, like, dealing with limited resources, yeah, we all do that, and that's incredibly tough. But that's something that I feel like we can overcome. Like, we've done enough times. Like, you and I have both been through this enough times to know that, like, okay, limited resources, I can make something happen, and I can make something happen that looks like something. But the part that seems sticky, at least when I hear it, is make it intriguing too, and hurry up. Is that part?
Make it exactly, the intriguing. Make it honest from me, intriguing for others, and hurry up. And also, don't succumb to past challenges I've had as far as my creative approach, where like, video games are a very complex, deep work product with so many different subsystems and areas of concern, from, like, I do not wish to, like, this is a super sensitive topic. Like, I have a hard time describing this to you in particular, because I don't want to diminish comics. Comics are amazing, and I deeply love them and whatever. But, like, as a work product,
we're in a place. Yeah, we're in a place of trust right now. Say what's on your mind.
So, like, I know I could do that sort of demo tape of a comic in a couple of months, right? But, like, I would love to keep that similar pace with the game, right? And I've been trying to be scrappy and adaptive, and I think I've been doing a pretty good job. That's the funny part. But I'm still worried about suddenly changing the definition of the game to make it overly complex. I'm worried about getting too stuck about then, like, remaking it or redoing it, because I've struggled with what technology to choose. And I've tried to, like, I have strong feelings about, like, programming languages and different environments and all this kind of stuff, but I'm, like, trying to set them aside to be pragmatic and get this thing in the world. Right. Like, so, like, it doesn't matter to me that too much that, like, I really don't want to work in C#, but here you go. Unity is all about C#, and Unity is pretty much the right tool overall. And I'm making progress just by poking at and experimenting through, like, different elements I want to include in the game, like the brawler engine, a little bit of dialogue, achievement, stuff like that. That it's like this tool that I don't want to use, but it's, like, the best tool, right? And
what's your reluctance
through that? What's my reluctance? Because I would
for C#.
Code in JavaScript or Python. What's my reluctance? C#. It doesn't read like how I want to read code. I I worked in it for years back in the early 2000s, and I thought like, I walked away from it. Now I'm done. But then it's like, maybe I'm not, right? So to me, it reminds me of solving boring business problems and stuff that I was like, sure, sometimes I'd be fascinated about what I was working on, but it doesn't feel like how empowered and exciting and joyful that like it feels like for me, because other people can have this love for C# and more power to them, right? But I love Python and I love JavaScript. These are the languages that I enjoy working in. And both pretty much used to work in Unity, and they're not really you're not meant to go forward using that in Unity anymore. That was a thing they announced this year. Anyway, so I've got that dissonance of like, it's totally the best tool, but I've got a slight distaste, harumph, and so I'm pointing out to myself like, I can get over that, especially because anyway, so you see like there's these kind of battles in choosing tools and making use of the tools. I'm trying to step out of the weeds there. And then once I have enough confidence, so in software development, you have this idea of if you're going to work in sort of sprints, like dividing up your chunks of effort toward delivering specific subsystems and making progress toward various capabilities, right? Like, for now you can just read the content in the system. Now you can actually interact with the content in the system. Now like each one of these things would be a sprint, making it more and more complex. I'm kind of like in sprint 0, where it's like, I've got these ambiguities I need to solve and I need to get out of that and then start where it's like, I know the tools and I can move on. But even then, that's my worry is like, I got to get out of sprint 0. I really got to not do the whole Lucy Charlie Brown thing where I'm both Lucy and Charlie Brown to myself. Where, I'm trying to kick the football of getting past this difficult choice about how can I make, as a solo developer, how can I make, consistent, confident progress that manifests itself in like, I've got a demo. All right, play it, get some feedback, refine it, release it, get some feedback, refine it, all that. And so I'm worried about getting there, and I'm worried about the things that I would do to prevent myself from getting there, as far as, the tools choice, then also features, where it's like being confident that I defined a simple and good enough game to like, okay, I'll go with that and just do it, because there's not enough resources to go with 5 different approaches and try them all, right? Anyway.
Is there any one feature, like a hypothesis for one feature that stands out as being like even 15% better than any of the others?
Not really, because even with there's this core set of things of like, well, you've got you creating the basic flow of the experience of being able to get into a game and start it, pause it, stop it, continue it, all that kind of stuff. But then also when you're in there, the fun loops of like, well, how I go about having the helpfulness aspect can make things way complex, or not that much more complex than having a brawler, right? How I go about doing the brawler could be pretty basic or get pretty wild, right? Are there long distance things, or is it all hand to hand? Is there whatever? Anyway, little stuff that like sounds little, but then has a lot of effect. It's with how the product feels, and also the effort it takes to, make it work.
Okay, one last question about to address my lack of knowledge of video game design, because I'm also hearing there's a tension in there in terms of which technology you choose in order to move forward with this. How much of the actual mechanics gets informed by the tool that you choose? In other words, what I'm saying is it possible to go back to the actual conceptual stage and map out like what you'd like to have happen, to like come up with like a wish list of like, this is the game mechanics and these are the fun loops, this is the ways I would solve these problems I have with brawlers, and then based on that be able to make a more informed choice as to which tool you move forward with? Or is it something where the tool that you choose, invariably its own limitations will lead you to solve some of those problems later on?
It's totally both, right? It's totally both,
boy.
where it's like there's the having enough of a focus to begin with to say like, well, I'm willing to adapt the design based on opportunity, but I need to have a focus to know where to look. And that's where I've been at. And over the course of November, I've found some components, some Unity assets that show great potential. And I'm at the point of testing those. But then it's a matter of saying this, it's almost this back and forth feedback loop of like, well, now what refinements do I want to make with the design to make this work together? To go from a general idea of what I want to do to a more specific idea. And then this is the other thing it's almost like the hardest pep talk for me about all this. It's being at peace with the long-term ambiguity of the solo effort, right? Because I know it's going to take me 2 darn years to do this. And I just don't want it to take me 2 years.
Okay. Are there shareable plateaus in that journey where you'd be able to actually point a brain trust at it and look at different parts?
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
It's also, I mean, okay, well, let me back up 2 steps and ask, why does it not thrill you to think about 2 years worth of effort working on this? Because I'll reframe it another way. That's 2 years where you get to think about a game. That's cool.
It's a great reframing. And typically I don't look at it as that, where it's the because both, I mean, the journey is rewarding, but like seeing it affect people and be useful and fun is what's more rewarding. And also I sort of recently went through a 2-year effort on a game, and
which we're going to talk about shortly.
Yeah, that was the thing that's like my biggest negative takeaway on it is I just don't want it to be 2 years.
Yeah, like with like longer projects that I've been able to share online, like that sense of isolation isn't quite as painful because I'm getting at least like those little tiny, even with the book I'm working on right now, I'm sharing little pieces of penciling and stuff on Instagram to trick myself into that feedback loop. Oh, some people said some nice things. Some people give it the thumbs up, right? I have this sense that what I'm creating is being interacted with in some way, even if they're just like looking at a character's facial expression, because that's all I'm sharing, right? And I think we've had this discussion before about like, is there a way to develop a game and share pieces of that process? Share like
there totally is. Like, and it's just not in my habit. So that's a really good point. I mean, honestly, there are hundreds and thousands of examples of independent game developers that they do just that. They'll share like, oh, here's a sprite I made. Here's a little GIF, or here's a video of me coding. And
I'll tell you another thing that I think about is I was just saying this in my last Thunder Punch Daily that I posted for Art Sound Off, is that having a Patreon to share the behind the scenes stuff of what I do makes me feel a lot more relaxed about sharing a lot of messy behind the scenes stuff, because I know that the people are there, like really want to be there. So I don't have to contextualize everything I'm saying as much, or at least I don't feel like I have to. Let me put it that way. So I don't even know if like what would, this is not a prescription, but I'm just saying like, I wonder what it would look like if a game designer said like, here's, instead of a Kickstarter, help me kickstart my game. This is a Patreon. Join me in the journey of making my game. Right? How would that look different? And how would that, I don't know, would more structure or more like a more explicit commitment to share the pieces, how would that change the way you work on it? I wonder.
That could be good. I really enjoyed. So like I did do a webcomic for, I guess, a little over 4 years, and that was fun. The incremental effort and feedback loop, I really dug.
I just also know that in my experience in working with you is you like explicit relationships, right? You like to say how you feel about somebody, and you like them to say how they feel about you. And so like anything that you can build into that structure to make that dynamic more explicit. Because you did the unblocking project, right? Where it was more like, I'm putting a thing here, and then I'm walking away. People can look at it if they want to, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was an experiment to get something out for every day for 1 year. And
it's unreal that you pulled that off. I can't.
It wasn't that hard. It was a little hard, but the thing that was challenging for me is, okay, I can do an experimental one-off thing, and maybe something that's a little deeper once in a while, right? So a lot of doodles were in there, and occasionally a painting, or occasionally, something, a deeper character design, or a study or something. But like, it was, so the frequency was satisfying, but then the cumulative outcome, and like, yeah, that's a bunch of blog posts for a year, but there's not a finished game. There's not a finished story, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my difficulty with the unblocking project. But you've given me some really interesting food for thought in your reactions to this.
Oh, cool! I'm glad.
Yeah.
I also I think another thing we've talked about here and there that I just want to bring back, I think it ropes in and applies to this conversation, is we talked about how, well, artists have live streaming. I wonder what live coding looks like, right? I'm sure somebody's done it, but like that also just like, is there a way to quote unquote sell the sawdust, and by selling the sawdust, incentivizing yourself to clock in the hours, and then that incentivization creates more product that people react to, which gives you good feedback loops that helps keep you motivated throughout the process, right? Or here's the downside. Commits you to this Sisyphean effort that doesn't pay off, and you just feel even more defeated at the end.
Well, thanks for putting that warning sign on the path.
I feel like I just Homer Simpsoned you. You could wake up dead tomorrow. Good night.
Yeah. There's a pit with a lot of spikes and shaky bridge. Okay, got it.
Just so I don't totally Pollyanna you on this, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, do you want to pick apart what we actually were doing for one another in the second half?
I would love to do that.
Okay. Awesome. So in about a minute and 30 seconds, we are going to talk about, like, sort of deconstruct what our intentions were and what we did as we were trying to boost each other up. But before we do that, we need to thank some people who make this show possible, and those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Let me pull up the Patreon page, patreon.com/leanintoart. And what is it? We were kind of talking about it just a minute ago. It's a way to fund ongoing projects, and it's a way for people who enjoy the stuff that we make, particularly this show, to give us a monthly upvote. It's a way for you to give us a monthly pep talk to say, yes, we believe in you and we believe in the stuff that you guys make, and here's $1 a month or whatever you feel that we deserve a month to make the show more sustainable. And we want to thank 5 people who have been doing just that. And let me see if I can get their names here. Ashley Knapp, Control-Alt-Lee on Twitter. Thank you, Ashley, for supporting the show. Jamie Gamble, another comic book writer, at Jamie Gamble on Twitter. Thank you, Jamie, for believing in us and the work that we do. Jesse Kaufman, who is in the chat and we were talking about earlier. You can find Jesse on Twitter at Jesse, Kauffman. And Rachel Ross at NYC Terrace on Twitter. Thank you, Rachel, for supporting us. And finally, Spencer Hallam. Your support means a lot to us. And if you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/leanintoart, where you will find all the shows that we make, in addition to the extra leans, the shows that we record in between. Well, we record it once a month, just for people who support us on Patreon. And we usually just kind of like riff out an idea and wind up landing on a topic, right, Rob?
Yeah, it's informal. It's more tongue in cheek, and it also is a little more, a little more candid, where we try to now make it, especially in service of a prompt. And so, like, that post, because it's private and it's only for patrons, it becomes a place where to chat, dialogue, react, take it any different direction, just among your fellow leaners who tend to have that same kind of, common culture of, ongoing learning, exploring, sometimes challenging, all that kind of stuff, visual storytelling, that it's just a great place to do that kind of thing. Some months there's a lot of chat, some months there's not, but it'd be great to hear from everyone.
Patreon.com/leanintoart. Okay. We probably need some music for the next part, right? How about, my soundboard, my new soundboard, media failed to load. How about this one? There we go. A little intense than what I was intending to play, but this is the 10,000 feet up section where we talk about, like, the first part was us modeling the activity. Now we think about the activity and talk about, like, the ideas behind the activity or the topic. Where do you want to start, Rob?
Well, let's see. If you think about, like, it's too funny. Like, so Pep Talks in general, and, like, in a way, like, what do we think of as, like, what's their job? Because sometimes I think it can sound like less, I don't know, less not an important tool. Like, somehow, so maybe it's a surface thing. Maybe it's just sort of a, toss some positivity in a direction and everything will be fine. Or, like,
well, I was going to say this earlier. It's like, you got this can very much come off as, I don't got time for this right now. You got this. I'll see you later. Can you deal with this? Thanks. I knew that you could.
I said, you got this.
You got not me.
Not
you
me.
got this. Yeah.
But
yeah. By the way, I saw the My Little Pony movie in the theater, and that's like the opening song, and it's the characters reassuring one of the other characters that they got this. They're really nervous about something, and in that movie, it's not the bad way. It's very much like, we are here to help you. You've got this, and we are here to support you all the way to the end. Right? Much different perspective and point of view.
How do they make it clear in that song that it's not just either like the washing of hands and stepping away?
No, it's like, it's saying,
or it's not just the cheese ball, like, because that can look either on the positive or negative. Well, you got this and I'm out, or it's like, it could be just, you got this and I'm smiling.
Or it could partially be really,
that, like, you really got this. Well, you
really got this. You're capable. We believe in you. And just in case you don't know, there's all this ambiguity around you right now. I'm doing this part over here to make sure that you don't have to think about that. I'm doing this part over here to make sure that you don't have to think about that. The parts that you're good at, you've got this. We've got the other stuff, right? And we're rooting for you. We believe in you, right? Like this, another potentially silly thing that I do at Nerd Camp every year. Nerd Camp is this event that happens in Jackson area in Michigan every summer. Is I host this drawing competition where, like, the big stars of the event, like Jenny Holm and Raina Telgemeier, come out, and we put them in front of 2 drawing pads. I take input from the crowd. It's like 500 kids in the room. And then I, like, mix and match the ideas and have them race to do a drawing based on the ideas the kids give me. But then it's also timed. It's like, so we got 3 minutes. And in the last 30 seconds, I have the kids on the count of 3 all scream at the same time, "We believe in you." And I'm telling you, if you hear 500 children scream, "We believe in you," that's like a magic spell. I highly recommend it to anybody who can get that. So there is a little bit of something to someone earnestly saying like, no. Like what I remember when I was a kid and I was participating in high school sports and stuff, and I remember people would be like cheering me on when I'm like running really hard or something. And I remember thinking like, yeah, that's nice that you're all saying nice things about me, but it's me doing the work right now, and this sucks. So like, cheer all you want. It's not doing it. It's not pumping anything in my legs. It's like this is all I got. But as I got older, I realized that there is a value to also having somebody put their hand on your shoulder, saying like, no, I've seen you work. I've seen what you do, and I know that you can handle this. And it seems scary right now, but you've been through this enough times. I'm here to provide third-party testimonial that you are capable of handling this thing, and I'm here to listen to you. As you express that anxiety about it. And I think that's something we were both doing as we were talking about the things we were stuck on. Is there was a lot of us just listening to each other at first, right?
Yeah, because it would be. I think there's a few different natures of this. Where like one sounds like it's like we're connected because of respect and care, but it's not necessarily like we're on the same exact mission. Like, oh, you're doing that thing, and I respect and believe in you. To like you have the capabilities, and like you will like possibly be on a journey to learn and adapt, which is also in your capabilities, right? Like you're going to get you have this, and you're going to get this, that kind of thing. But that's like the almost like that the hand on the shoulder kind of thing. But the other one is like there seems to be like you described the My Little Pony situation where you're on the same team. And there's a different kind of you got this and we got this, and how that could work too. Where sometimes pep talks are almost on the team collaborator and or team leader standpoint, right? So maybe like what if someday I figure out how to scrappily collaborate in some fair and equitable manner on a project, and I want to give a pep talk to the team, right? So like that's kind of a leader kind of situation. But like seems like a different dynamic, right? What
yeah, it's
those different angles.
Yeah, most of the time when I'm encountering it, it's teacher to student, and that is such a clear relationship. So
right.
But I do remember oh man, I just remember this one day where the teen students came to class, and I often like to let my students hijack my class. I look forward to those moments when the kids will take over the class a little bit and like take ownership of the class a little bit, and then I'm there as I step back and take on more of like a guide perspective, right? And I'm not an authoritarian. I'm not necessarily like the designated leader. I'm more like I'm advising now, because I like it when the kids have skin in the game. But there's this one day where they tried to take over in a way that I don't think I was terribly comfortable with, where it really felt like they were taking over the whole hen house, and I don't want to go into specifics, but they wanted to say and do things that I thought were nasty in spirit. And then I remember that was like one of the only times I ever got really like forcefully loud and angry with my students. And I raised my voice and I hit things, and I said like, comics is the highest form of communication. No one in my classroom will disrespect it in any way. And if you want to explore some of these ideas that you explore, you will explore them in a way that is appropriate to the medium of comics. If not, there's the door. You can go sit out there and wait for your parents, And I remember I said to the room, I was like, who wants to do the work now? And like every kid raised their hands. So it was like a very forceful kind of pep talk. It wasn't like, I believe in you, I'm being very gentle. This was a call to, this is the greatest thing in the entire world. You're performing one of the more noble things in this world, and I'm reminding you of that responsibility. That's another kind of pep talk too, I think.
I mean, that's a principled call to action, and it's taking a stand for something that's meaningful. And if you share that meaning, that's a pretty quick way to get people aligned in purpose, right? And that seems like a really healthy use of leadership as sort of a authority by leading by example, something to follow, because you're still not following your personality. You're following a greater purpose that is beneficial to all. And that's like, anyway, like it's almost like worth this a little brief tangent about leadership as a concept, because we don't talk about that much on the show, right? Where I mean, typically, like we don't engage with topics as authoritarians. We are let's see, we're egalitarian, and we're along the same journey, and at different places and different styles, different skills, cultures, what have you. But in a way, like any of us and all of us can be leaders in this space. Leadership can get a negative connotation when it's interpreted as the authoritarian thing, right? Where the truth for an authoritarian tends to reside inside of them, versus the truth for someone who really believes in something that they can include others on and rally, right? That's not authority. You're reminding everyone of a common cause. Like that's still leadership. You're being a leader. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And yeah, another thing that I've done. Well, no, I don't want to get too much into pedagogy now. I want to read a comment from Jesse.
Okay.
He's saying pointing to past successes is crucial to "You Got This," especially when you could remember having similar concerns and feelings before the successes arrived. Right. And that's something that I think both Rob and I noticed that we didn't say. We pointed to that, I think, in a very gentle way, without, because like I think there's and this isn't the counter Jesse, it's just something I've noticed in my own dealings with friends and colleagues and students, is that I try to be careful not to say, look, we've been through this before. You were scared the last time, you did it. Why are you scared this time? Because I don't want to denigrate the fear that they're feeling now. The fear or whatever negative emotions that go with being stuck they're feeling now is very, very real, right? And that's worth acknowledging. But then, yes, like Jesse suggests, going back and saying, you felt like this before, didn't you? When you were at this point, right? What happened?
It's like uses and misuses of context of like,
yeah.
Oh, here you go again, talking about your fretful thing about being an artist. Oh, what do you got on the shelf behind you? A bunch of books you made. Whatever. Move on.
Bringing up some very, very unhappy memories of past roommates and romantic partners.
Wow, that was role playing. That's role playing. Sorry, I did not mean that to be like.
I know.
An exchange now.
I'm acknowledging the fact that I bet a good number of the people listening have heard those exact words before. But not fun.
That's the thing. Let's see. So the emotional aspect of this, there's in the context. I mean, so you can use that in a way of it's almost like providing the cheerful, the encouragement with like a boost or a power up to say like, look at this, you did this, right? Versus the other one we were going through.
Right.
So yeah, Jesse, I think, I would imagine, that's more the angle that he was probably advocating for.
Well, another more I guess a more concrete metaphor I might use for this is Anna and I ran into this in Death Valley. We were going on all these different hikes, and we came upon this one called the Mummy, where it's like, oh, there's like this big rock formation that supposedly looks like a mummy. I got to see that. Well, it was an unmarked trail, and so we had to like just park along the highway and like walk out like a mile into the desert, And it's like, well, there's signs everywhere saying like take water everywhere you go because like you dehydrate so quickly. Oh, and by the way, don't put your hand in any dark places. And like there's all these holes in the ground with like cobwebs over top of them. It's like, oh, those are probably for tarantulas. And so like we're walking through, and like Midwesterner anxiety is kind of growing. And then we get to the end of the canyon. It's super awesome. We find the mummy rock and everything. We find like graffiti from like 1887, like underneath a rock in this.
Whoa.
Super cool. So we get like this little bit of a confidence boost, right? It's like, whoa, we did that. It was pretty awesome, pretty great. The next day we're like, let's do another unmarked trail, right? I'm feeling like empowered. I can do this. We got this. And then we get to the trail. It's like, oh, we got to climb like 7-foot walls. We got to climb down 7-foot walls. Like, we're going to be like out of sight of the highway and there's no cell reception. And then we were like, we don't got this. So it's like that narrative of like, well, we went through and we were scared. We made it to the end. Like, and being reminded of that and having that in mind can like certainly, I mean, in my case, there's a comedic ending where we were both like, nope, that's too scary. But I think that concrete, there's also like a sense of fact, right? It's like you've been through this before, you beat it before. Yes, maybe this is different. Maybe the new situation is slightly different, but you've proven to yourself that you have the capability to get through this.
And I like the flexibility in those two examples where that was a bit of a theme of my wrap up for Art Sound Off, was just having less severity with a lesson. Just because you learned a thing doesn't mean it's like this now, I don't know, like harsh and widely applicable fact that must always exist or something, right? So having a looser relationship with like, yeah, we were successful, but like that doesn't mean you're going to now, go up and down those drops and whatnot.
Right.
That's, I mean, having that kind of flexible like relationship with it is almost like that's encouraging too, right? Because that is like an openness to open to other outcomes kind of thing.
Yeah. And acknowledgement that growth isn't in a single vector. Right?
Yeah.
There's not a single trajectory that means growth. Growth can mean a lot of different things, a lot of different directions.
I suppose. Because like, okay, then because so Pep Talks could be, well, because you're about to take on a normal task, but you may be about to take on like a failing battle or like a high cost one where you just like, yep, this one, it is a commitment that's going to be so extreme that like you're going to be in a high performing state without the ability to do enough self-care and maintenance or something, right? The kinds of things that a lot of people celebrate and overly, put in a hero context for startups. So, oh yeah, we slept under our desks and blah, blah, right? For months. And then out came the startup and our IPO or whatever. And they like that kind of thing is really touted, but yet honestly, it's a path that works for some people. And like, anyway, a task can be of that nature too.
Absolutely.
Like aggressive deadlines and whatnot.
Well, and I mean, I don't know how helpful it is when I do that, but that's something I did to you when we were doing the first section, and I know I've done this to my other friends, is I will point out like, well, I wonder what it would look like if you did this. I wonder if it would look like if you did that, or it could blow up in your face, like, and acknowledge that. You
totally did that. That was helpful.
I totally did.
Yeah.
But not to diminish the worthiness of the endeavor, right? At least I hope I never do that. But
no, because my endeavor is more like, yeah, I am going to go down the drops and stuff. I know like this is that kind of difficult. It's an endeavor of, reasonable difficulty or maybe slightly unreasonable difficulty. And am I really prepared? So that could lead to failure. But is like,
Okay, well then here's my last thought on this before we get to closing thoughts or final thoughts. Is like another piece of totemic magic I might pull out on you, and this is where like when you're pep talking friends, this is especially helpful if you've been observant of your friends. Is to pull out. I would pull out the fact that Miyagi wanted Daniel to stop fighting the moment he got hurt. Right. He's like, you proved the point. You don't need the damn trophy. and Daniel was like, but this is an American movie, and we got to have me kick the bad guy in the face. Otherwise, American audiences will be really angry. They don't like endings that have mixed messages like that. All right, go out and do the thing, kid. But let the record show that Miyagi said, you already won it like before the last 3 minutes of that movie. So there's failure and there's failure, right?
You had to pull a Miyagi. That's where, yeah, friendship context. That's what a great kind of pep talk, because you pull on so much, like I don't know, common mythology and also just, and even if it's not common mythology, like you know each other, you know those things that are meaningful symbols. So
For sure.
yeah, you're good at that.
Well, this is, I think, the other thing that I think is really important that I hope we modeled okay in this, is that a lot of it comes down to just listening to each other and asking some probing questions. And I think both of us were careful not to jump in with prescriptions and, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Because sometimes that can feel like accusations. Like, well, clearly you haven't done enough, Rob. Why aren't you doing enough?
Water? What do you mean?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I think, at least in my experience with students, and also just with my experience as myself as a person, like, sometimes I just need to like blow off some steam and speak the ideas aloud, because I haven't had a chance to do that. And Jesse just said in the chat, naming fear can sometimes steal some of its bite, and sometimes just saying the stuff out loud and having somebody look you in the eye and say, like, no, you're not crazy, can be huge.
Like those emotions. Yeah. That's totally understandable.
Yep.
No solutions, just being there and being like understanding.
Yeah. So I think that's also crucial to helping. So pep talk doesn't necessarily need to be rah rah you. Pep talk can also be like, yeah, what you're experiencing is exceedingly tough, and I'm with you, and I believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. I know I've had some friends who have done exactly that for me. Like, as we part ways, I was like, I believe in you. Just so you know, that's everything sucks right now, but I'm looking at you and I believe in you. That kind of thing could be more helpful than what is apparent in the moment. All right, you want to do final thought?
Totally. I just want to that disarms the aloneness. Like that thing. I'm with you and I believe in you. And that's clearly, you can't be alone.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to final thought in just a second. In about 1 minute and 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. We're to close out and figure out how to wrap up this episode and say, boom, that's a podcast. But before we do that, we got to thank some other people who make this show possible. Those people happen to be us. We make this show possible. We make the show. And we happen to make other things too. I announce myself as a cartoonist and teaching artist. And one of the things I do is I make comics. And the comic I hope you'll check out today is at boulderandfleet.com. Story about two best friends, a bear and a bird, who go on adventures together. And it's kind of a lighthearted, kid-friendly story that I hope is one of those kids' stories that's good enough that you enjoy it even as an adult. Or maybe if you're just a person who likes me, or like me, who likes a lot of kid media, who goes to see My Little Pony in the theater, you might enjoy it too. And right now on the Boulder and Fleet Patreon, I've been serializing my latest project, Page a Day. So you can go check it out there. And hey, I should stop screen sharing real quick because I got to share something on the camera. I just got these in this year's holiday postcard, which, in the spirit of Don't Give Up, features the heroes in the story, like climbing a snowy peak in a blizzard. Don't give up, stick together. And everybody who supports me on Patreon, patreon.com/Jerzy, will get one of those in the mail, providing they give me their address and I know where to send it. And I'll do a little doodle on the back with some holiday greetings. So that's at boulderandfleet.com. Rob, you make a game. I'm going to pull up the game so we can talk about. I can play the game while you talk about the game. How's that sound?
That sounds super awesome. And that card is beautiful, and the spirit behind it's awesome. I think that should be a poster also. But anyway, this panda.
Let me turn the volume down on this pin. There we go.
Right on. Okay. It is pretty mellow music, but it was cranking. So This Panda Needs You is a game that I co-designed with my wife, Kate, and then I did the art and the coding and all that kind of stuff. And well, okay, that's the game we were talking about earlier that took 2 years to make. And it's all about having a really mellow, enjoyable shape and pattern matching experience. So you have a little panda going through a little bamboo forest, and the panda encounters stacks of blocks, stacks of different shapes of blocks over time, right? It gets a little more complex as you go along. And your job is to, like, well, you see the blocks as they were, the panda sees the blocks as they were, a cloud comes along, knocks them all down, and then you put it back to the way it was. You set things right. That's why this panda needs you. And there's like over 50 levels. It's available on lots of platforms, both on iOS and Android and Mac and Windows. So Mac and Windows, go to the itch.io store and search for This Panda Needs You. And then, of course, your appropriate mobile platforms to get that as well. And you can learn more about it at this-panda.com.
Let me pull up the website so people can see this-panda.com. And there it is. That's where you can find out how to download it. And then let's say that very nice, Rob and Jerzy, you make games, you make comics, but we're really here to listen to the way that you think about things. Well, fair enough. We got this thing called leanintoart.com/workshops where you can download videos, complete video workshops that we've created at a price of your choosing, even $0. You can choose the price of $0 if you want. And if you're watching this video on YouTube and you think that what we do is valuable, giving it a thumbs up helps more people discover the show. And if you are listening on a podcatcher like iTunes or whatever podcatcher you use, Overcast, giving the show a star review in wherever you can helps more people find the show as well. And we thank everybody who has been doing just those things. I've got one more announcement I want to make while I've got everybody's attention on the screen. This just dropped in the YouTube feed that you're watching right now if you're watching on YouTube. Rob, you have not seen this yet.
I did not catch this year's.
Yeah, you weren't at A2CAF this year, but the video for the 2017 Kids Comics Awards ceremony just dropped, and it's on the Ann Arbor District Library's website, but I also posted it in my YouTube feed, and I just wanted to share this particular moment of the award show, and this is what you can look forward to by watching it. Let me turn the volume up on it.
I can find it.
Oops.
I'll find him.
Okay.
I can do that for you.
Okay.
All right.
Miss Buzzword.
Where did he go? I'll be right back. I'll get him.
Okay.
Miss Buzzword.
What?
Miss Buzzword.
Where'd the sunglasses go?
I don't know. Oh my God! No! Why are you doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me?
That's Ben carrying me over his shoulder, like a sleeping bag.
Jonathan, get back!
I got him for you. I got him.
I see that you're here. Well done, Ben.
So, anyway, not exactly part of the ad drop, but like if you want to watch that later, it's on my YouTube page at youtube.com/comicsartegreat. We did a full puppet show with Rankin the Space Elf from the Galaxy of Super Adventure. Jesse Kaufman was in there, Dame Ladycat was in there, Ben Hatke, Jarrett Krasaska, and a host of other stars. So
that is fantastic. What a strapping young lad to be booking across a stage with you over his shoulder.
And then spinning around with me. And the funny part was I said to Ben off stage, I'm like, okay, so in the next part, you're going to come drag me out because like the mean bad guy of the award show like asks you, he's her crony in the skit, like to like rough me up and drag me out. And I said to Ben privately, I'm like, okay, make it really look like you're roughing me up. And he's like, okay. And so then I'm backstage and he comes running back and I didn't know what he was going to do. So when he lifted me up, those screams were real. And I didn't remember screaming, why are you doing this to me? Now I know how I would react to real stress. Anyway.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So,
yeah. That was all a part of the Ann Arbor Comics Arts Festival and the Comics Awards. That's so, yeah. What a beautiful event.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah.
A2CAF.com. So, all right. Final thought time. What do you think?
Well, let's see. So I think, so should you seek out a pep talk and, like, I mean, if you should, how do you go about it? Right. And then like, what if it's just you alone?
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Should you seek him out? I have, and I've also had situations where I didn't know I needed it until a friend did it. You know, I've had situations where I start talking about what I'm dealing with, and I think that I'm just being the responsible adult and saying like, well, this is the life I asked for. This is the life I chose. I'm just going to keep pushing on. And then like a particularly caring or insightful friend will ask a few more questions, and I realize I'm hurting a lot more than I thought I was. Other times I'll know that, like, okay, I'm really stuck on something, and I'll reach out to my brain trust. I've got like a handful of friends that I can just ping and say, like, can you meet on Skype just for a little bit to help me triangulate an issue, help me think something through. Dan Mishkin is one of those kinds of people where, like, whenever I'm stuck with my work, I know I can just ping him and share what I've got, and he can usually help push me back on the tracks again. If you're alone, that's a toughie. And when I was early on and alone, I did resort to a lot of the example I used with you when I pulled out the Mr. Miyagi thing. You know, like something you had in the notes that we didn't really touch on was Pep Talks and Stories.
Oh yeah. That's a great resource.
You want to share some of yours that you grabbed?
Okay. So I was in a software development situation a few years ago where I was asked as a team where we could volunteer for something that was going to be pretty hard. And one of the people on the team was like, you know, this reminds me of something I saw in a football movie. And I'm like, sports ball movie? Come on, what? And it turns out it's like a really interesting, vulnerable speech. It has this mixed situation of like, it's like very urgent and it's team. It's kind of like, oh, there's a down and out football team that needs to really get their stuff together, right? They're somehow lost. And you can tell I have not seen the movie. I still haven't seen the movie. Of course not. But it's, but you could tell, like, oh boy, there's some personal stuff. You see looks happening in this locker room, right? And there's a coach doing their coach thing of like, I'm kind of washed up, but we're gonna, you know, maybe we're gonna die, but we're gonna do something. And like, that's my terrible summarization of this thought. But like, it's Al Pacino, right? He's a pretty capable actor and does a great job with a coach in that situation, and all the energy of the different players in the room reacting to his talk, which it's been given the title on YouTube a couple places as the inch by inch speech. And you know, it's a really interesting focusing thing that seems to unify a group toward their shared purpose and create a strong sense of urgency, and has like this very battle kind of approach, right? And that's one way to like build courage if you're interested and open to facing this challenge with this kind of battle approach, right? So and it's a good example of that.
Another one I think of, my example was from a musical, actually, My Fair Lady, where Rex Harrison's character, Henry Higgins, he's kind of a jerk. He's very self-involved, and he's focused entirely on his work. And there's even songs that he sings in the story that are basically like celebrating the fact that he owes nothing to nobody, right? He's not accountable in any way to anybody, and that's the way he wants to live his life. And then, I don't know how familiar you are with the premise of My Fair Lady. Let's see. I remember the sort of proper speech. Some kind of scene about pronouncing something like the rain and something. Yes, he's a speech expert who makes a bet, and that's another part of his arrogance. He makes a bet, like he points to Eliza Doolittle, this woman selling flowers in the streets. Like, I can even turn this woman into like a duchess because I can get her to speak so well. That's how awesome I am. And throughout the whole like first 2/3 of the story, he's like bullying her. He's like really giving her a hard time and like treating her like garbage. But then there's this moment where they're both fatigued. They've been up all night trying, and she's not doing it. She's not saying the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. And so he does this thing where he says like, look, I know this is hard, and I know your nerves are like really raw, and we've been going all night, but think about what you're doing. You're playing with the English language. This is the language of Keats, of Milton, of Shakespeare. And he goes in this description of, again, it's like this call to action of like, this is the purpose. This is the calling. You're doing something grand. You're doing something larger than yourself when you engage with this thing. And so then he collapses in the chair. And so like he both honors the effort and the fatigue, but then also says, but this is why we're doing it. And then he collapses. So he's even showing his vulnerability. And that's when she finally understands, and she says the rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. But as a kid watching that, I was like, yeah, I want somebody in my life like that who can like scream at me and point to the thing that we're aiming for, you know? Sometimes you don't want Obi-Wan Kenobi to say like, well, you must do what you think is right. Sometimes you want the person who's saying like, no, what we're doing is something incredible. And that's why you're exhausted right now, because we're doing incredible things together. I wonder though, I mean, earlier on we were talking about like how a lot of this was acknowledging and listening and understanding and reassuring that you've got this. I don't think that those story examples that we've highlighted are necessarily doing that part of it though.
No, I think there's it's interesting. I did not realize that your example had that kind of, because there's almost like a little bit of an authoritarian harshness, right?
Yeah.
That's mixed. Like the Al Pacino thing is both like, I'm vulnerable and washed out, but we're going to try one more time or whatever. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yet, so he's got a little bit of authority, but a little bit like saying like, yeah, I know I'm there too. And I don't know. But then there's another angle to be more about like optimism, hope, possibility, love, right? And there's a far more nurturing pep talk I would classify by Kid President. You ever encounter a Kid President video on YouTube?
Mm-mm.
They're pretty great. He's pretty funny and awesome. And yeah, you got to watch it. Like the Kid President one. Honestly, I kind of want you to watch the Al Pacino one first, but anyway, just to like level set. It's kind of like a palate thing. It's like I'm being a chef. I'm like a YouTube chef. Anyway, got to cleanse your palate, have contrast, and it's far more. You got this with enough context and invitation, an inviting, caring call to action. To say like you're more empowered than you think, and you're going to feel great by stepping up and grabbing hold of that capability, and then anyway, it's really joyful.
Okay. Well, Jesse's backing you up on that. He's saying Kid President is a great example. So everybody who's listening, if you're like me and haven't checked out Kid President, that's your follow-up after this episode. All right. Did we do a podcast? I think we did. All right. Well, thank you, Rob, for this discussion. This had a lot more traction than I hoped it would. And thanks everybody who hung out in the chat with us, Jesse and who else was in there? Oh, Jesse and Jesse were both in there. Thanks. And we record the show every week. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central on YouTube, stream it live, and then we collect it as a video and audio podcast at patreon.com/leanintoart. So we'll be back next week. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay. Oh, wait. Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'm going to shut off the stream. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you for hanging out.